on the way.
BoogeyMan band coming round the bend. Is BoogeyMan band? Is BoogeyMan band?
Greetings, my fellow Fright Fiends, and thanks so much for dropping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. This is a video that I've been planning to do for a while now. This is something that I thought about doing back in February, and it's, you know, we're entering the summer movie season. This was a huge time for me when I was a kid, and you know, with the pandemic and everything that happened, you know, a few years ago, the summer movie season seems to have lost its luster. But, you know, growing up, this was the huge time of year where, you know, I was excited about, you know, what was coming out. It was these huge blockbusters with a lot of great actors that I really respected and wanted to see the, you know, the newest, you know, their newest efforts, whether it be a brand new property or it would be a sequel to a well-loved franchise. Growing up, one of the most important franchises for me was the Terminator franchise. And the original Terminator film would come out, of course, 40 years ago in 1984. It didn't release until October 26th of 1984, so it wasn't a summer movie. But the Terminators kind of set the precedence for the blockbuster, especially its sequel, the 1991 Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So I thought I thought it was important to talk about this and kind of pay tribute to this series and the 40th anniversary of the original film. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rank these films today. And I've seen all of them. I've seen them all multiple times. My number one has never changed. And some of the other ones, though, have moved around a little bit. I feel like this franchise is kind of dead in the water right now. There is an animated series that's coming out. It's supposed to be coming out this August, and it's going to be on Netflix. I'm not really big into anime, so it's not really that interesting to me. I do feel like the franchise is kind of stalled, so maybe this is something that'll jumpstart it again. So here we go. I thought this would just be fun for this holiday weekend. So there's 6 Terminator films, and my number 6 ranking is going to be 2015's Terminator Genisys. So Terminator Genisys would serve as a reboot of the franchise, taking the premises of the original film in another direction and ignoring events depicted in the sequels and the TV series. The film stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, who reprises his role as the Terminator. It was directed by Alan Taylor and written by Laisha Callegrids and Patrick Lussier. Along with Schwarzenegger, the film's cast features Jason Clarke, Emilia Clarke, Jai Courtney, J.K. Simmons, Matt Smith, Courtney B. Vance, and Lee Byung-hun. The story follows Kyle Reese, a soldier in a post-apocalyptic war against Skynet, who is sent from 2029 to 1984 to prevent Sarah Connor's death. When Kyle arrives in the past, he discovers that the timeline has been altered by Skynet and that Sarah has been raised by a reprogrammed Terminator sent to protect her. So, I remember the summer that this one came out. In fact, that summer I actually did a sort of a profile on the Terminator franchise on this channel. It was the last time I really talked about the franchise. Terminator Genisys was kind of a mixed bag for me when I saw it. I liked it because I thought it was going to answer a lot of questions that it left in the next 2 sequels, because they had planned a new trilogy for this. And then when it underperformed at the box office, that was kind of scrapped. And that happens multiple times in this franchise. The things about the film that have bothered me as I've rewatched it, I feel like it's very cartoonish. Like I said, it didn't have that, you know, that sci-fi realism balance that I felt like the other ones did. I also wasn't a big fan of Jai Courtney as Kyle Reese. Kyle Reese is one of my most favorite characters in fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, whatever you want to call it. I love Michael Biehn. Absolutely adore the guy. And Jai Courtney just does not fit Kyle Reese for me. I was really surprised they went that route and cast him. And I've seen him in other things that I like. I liked him in the Suicide Squad movies, and I just thought he was very flat as Kyle Reese. I thought Emilia Clarke looked like Linda Hamilton, and she's great. She was so great on Game of Thrones, but I just didn't like her as the character. And I thought that Schwarzenegger did a great job of adding multiple layers to this T-800 that's been protecting Sarah for a long time now. You know, she calls him Pops because he's been raising her. But in the end, I felt like it was a lot of time jumping, and I felt like, you know, this was the one that came after Salvation. And Salvation, had kind of, it was set in the future. It was during the war against the machines. And for me at this point, that's what I wanted to see. We had 3 films prior that dealt with time travel and the Terminator being sent back to kill Sarah Connor or John Connor, and seeing the war firsthand was what I wanted to see. And with this film, it's the same kind of rinse and repeat, and that's why watching it, and there's no real stakes in this. And then there's this weird decision they make with the John Connor character, and I just really didn't like what they did with that, and it made no sense because Kyle and Sarah are time jumping, and what happens to John doesn't make any sense at all. So, I know they were probably going to explain that in the next films, but of course this whole timeline or this whole series that was supposed to be was scrapped, so there's never any answer. So it just feels like this film with a lot of strange choices that never really have any resolve. Number 5 for me is going to be 2009's Terminator Salvation. Terminator Salvation is a 2009 American military science fiction action film that is the 4th installment of the Terminator franchise, serving as a sequel to Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines, but also as a soft reboot. It is directed by McGee and written by John Brancato and Michael Ferris. It is the only Terminator film to date to not feature Arnold Schwarzenegger, though his likeness briefly appears digitally instead. It stars Christian Bale and Sam Worthington, with Anton Yelchin, Moon Bloodgood, Bryce Dallas Howard, Common, Michael Ironside, and Helena Bonham Carter in supporting roles. In a departure from the previous installment, Salvation is a post-apocalyptic film set in the year 2018. It focuses on the war between Skynet's machine network and humanity, as the remnants of the world's militaries have united to form the Resistance to fight Skynet. Bale portrays John Connor, a Resistance fighter and central character, while Worthington portrays cyborg Marcus Wright. Yelchin plays a young Kyle Reese, a character first introduced in The Terminator in 1984, and the film depicts the origins of the T-800 Terminator. Now, I saw this film opening weekend as well, and I was really excited about this. I remember the marketing campaign was really great for it, although it did spoil a few things about the Marcus Wright character. The other thing I think that kind of prevented this film from being as successful as it was is there was kind of a backlash against Christian Bale, who a year prior had just had the juggernaut that was The Dark Knight, the sequel to Batman Begins. And what happened was, during the production of this film, he had gotten into sort of this verbal assault with the film's cinematographer, being Shane Hurlbut. And I remember that spreading across social media, and just people sort of then, of course, how anything goes. If there's any type of negativity against a star of a film that's coming out, it kind of has an effect on that film's performance. And I think that was something that actually sidelined the film. But even though this film isn't perfect, I'm not a big fan of Sam Worthington, and I thought the Marcus Wright character was kind of weak. That's just my own personal opinion. I'm just not a fan of the actor, but nothing against him personally. But I did like the idea of going into the future, of not, using the plot device of the time machine and going back and trying to, kill somebody to prevent, them from stopping the war, or, prevent the war entirely. This was really interesting to see these characters that were continuing from where Rise of the Machines had left off, and seeing Christian Bale as John Connor, who I think he did a great job in the role. I think the standout in this film for me is the late great Anton Yelchin, who I'm still so saddened that he passed away. I was a fan of him. First thing I remember seeing him in was Along Came a Spider, the Morgan Freeman follow-up to Kiss the Girls. He was great in that. He was also in Hearts in Atlantis with Anthony Hopkins, another great performance. Just a terrific actor, and I really thought he was the best embodiment of the Kyle Reese character that Michael Biehn portrayed in the original film. So for me, he was the heart of the film for me. But there's also some great nods back to Terminator 2. I love seeing, where the Terminators are made. I love seeing what the original early Terminators look like, and then seeing, what the T-800s would eventually look like. It's a fun film. It's again one that I wish, it was another one like Genesis where it was supposed to spawn more sequels, more story, and again, it didn't perform like they wanted, so they scrapped this one, and we never got those follow-ups. So again, it's this unfinished property for me. It's something where We were presented a lot of stuff, and we didn't get a resolution. So, but I think it's a good film. It's not my favorite. It's not one that I watch all the time, but there are some good visuals in it. There's some good action moments in it. They went with the practicality in this one a lot more than some of the stuff that was done in Genesis, which was more CGI. Again, it's not one that I've revisited. In fact, you know, when I had originally planned to do this video, I rewatched all of these films and found a lot of things about this film that I still do enjoy. And it's probably one I want to, you know, check out again from time to time, because I did have a good time revisiting after a long time. So yeah, number 5 for me is going to be Terminator Salvation. Number 4 for me, and this one changed a little bit because I rewatched one of these other films and it kind of moved up a little bit for me. But number 4 for me is going to be the third film, Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines. Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines is a 2003 science fiction action film that is the third installment in the Terminator franchise and is a sequel to Terminator 2: Judgment Day. It is directed by Jonathan Mostow and stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nick Stahl, Claire Danes, and Kristana Locan. In its plot, the malevolent artificial intelligence Skynet sends a TX Locan, a highly advanced Terminator, back in time to ensure the rise of the machines by killing top members of the future human resistance, as John Connor's location is unknown. Resistance sends back a reprogrammed T-850 Schwarzenegger to protect John and Kate, played by Claire Danes. And this one was always going to be a tough one because it's following up Terminator 2, and it was coming out 12 years after that film. So Terminator 2 came out in 1991. This movie came out in 2003. And there was a lot of elements that were different. It wasn't directed. It was going to be the first Terminator movie not directed by James Cameron. This one was directed by Jonathan Mostow, who I was a huge fan of from the movie Breakdown with Kurt Russell. Also, no Linda Hamilton. So the Sarah Connor character was not in this. Originally, they were trying to get Ed Furlong to come back to play John Connor, but he was having personal issues, and they ended up recasting Nick Stahl to play John Connor. This one would also feature Claire Danes, David Andrews, and also the first time we would have a female Terminator, and that would be the TX, played by Kristana Locan, and of course Arnold Schwarzenegger would be returning, this time as the T-850 that is sent back to protect John Connor. This film, I remember when it opened, it actually, you know, I mean, it opened 21 years ago, which is crazy to think about. That, Bad Boys 2, and Pirates of the Caribbean were the movies I was most looking forward to that summer. It was actually the summer my wife and I were planning our wedding. We would get married in October of that year. And I remember we went and saw it the same day that we went and did our hors d'oeuvres tastings. We went to this place to taste the food that would be served at our wedding, and then we went and saw Terminator. And right out the gate, the thing that I liked about this film, and still like about this film, is that there's just a very grim mood to this film that I don't even think was present in Terminator 2. I don't know what it is about this film, but this film feels bleak. And where Terminator 2 had hope in it, this one feels very bleak to me when I watch it. And I think that it was really great seeing Schwarzenegger step back into the role. I think he looked just like he did in in Terminator 2, the last time he played the Guardian Terminator character. I also thought Kristana Locan was terrific as the TX. I didn't think she was as menacing as Robert Patrick as the T-1000. I don't think anybody's been able to top that. But I do think that she did a good job. It's a shame she didn't do more, because I really liked her, and I think she had a tremendous presence as this character. She's very scary. And we see a very different John Connor in this, whereas he was kind of the, you know, mouthy little kind of rebellious kid in T2, played of course by Ed Furlong, and this time he's sort of like this haunted, lonely, scared man that, you know, has, you know, survived, you know, when Judgment Day was supposed to be. It didn't happen. They were able to prevent it. And then you find out in this film, when he meets up with Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-850, that it's inevitable. Judgment Day is going to happen no matter what. So they just prolonged it. They didn't stop it. And I think the element of this one that's always bothered me is the fact that Sarah Connor's not in it. So that was a huge thing. No Linda Hamilton. But also the way that Sarah Connor is sort of written out, the way they explain that she's not there. I never liked it. It just didn't fit for me. I don't know why. It's kind of a heartbreaking ending, but it also shows that it sort of is the first steps to John Connor becoming the leader that we will see, 6 years later in Salvation. But I do still love the film, and I've always championed it. A lot of people really hate this film for some reason, but I think Jonathan Mostow did a great job directing this film, and I think all of the actors did a great job in it. And yeah, Nick Stahl wasn't Furlong, but I've always liked Nick Stahl, and I think he's a great actor, and I know he's had his own troubles in his life, but I really like the humanity that he brought to John Connor. His interactions with Schwarzenegger weren't as strong as as Furlong and Schwarzenegger, but I really liked Claire Danes and the relationship between those two, I think, was the strongest. So, yeah, so it's still, it's not as high as it used to be. It used to be my third favorite, but for right now, it's number 4. So number 4 is Rise of the Machines. Number 3 for me, and this might be a controversial take because it wasn't this high for me the first time I watched it, but rewatching it a couple times, I have to say my third favorite now is 2019's Dark Fate. Terminator Dark Fate is a 2019 American science fiction action film. It is the 6th installment in the Terminator franchise and serves as a direct sequel to both Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Ignoring the events depicted in Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, and Terminator Genesis, film stars Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger reprising their characters, Sarah Connor and the T-800 Terminator, respectively, and introduces Mackenzie Davis, Natalie Reyes, Gabriel Luna, and Diego Boneta as new characters. Dark Fate is directed by Tim Miller and written by David S. Goyer, Justin Rhodes, and Billy Ray, based on a story by James Cameron. Charles H. Eglee, Josh Friedman, Goyer, and Rhodes. Film is set 25 years after the events of Terminator 2, when the machines send an advanced Terminator, Luna, back in time to 2020 with instructions to kill Danny Reyes, whose fate is connected to the future. The Resistance also sends Grace Davis, an augmented soldier, back in time to defend Danny, who is also joined by Sarah Connor and Skynet's T-800. So yeah, this was the most divisive, I think, out of all of the Terminator sequels that came out after Judgment Day. And for some reason, it had to do with the opening of the film that sees the Terminator kill John Connor. They did a CGI rendering to make it look like a young Ed Furlong. And they also digitally de-aged Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I think that's what a lot of people just could not get past, is that the whole point of the first 2 films, since this is a sequel, direct sequel to those, was to protect John Connor and protect the Resistance. But in this film, Skynet was defeated, and there's this new entity called Legion. Now, Skynet, of course, sent more Terminators back, and that's what ended up undoing, the John Connor. But John Connor's story was pretty much done. And as we saw with films like Rise of the Machines, not really Salvation, because I think Salvation he was established pretty well, but Rise of the Machines and Genesis, they really didn't know what to do with John Connor. And I think it was kind of interesting to start fresh and talk about somebody else that would lead the Resistance against this new entity called Legion. One thing I really loved about this film was the new adversary, the Rev 9. Really, really creepy and really, really great use of special effects to show just how different this adversary is from the other incarnations of the Terminator that was sent back to kill, the main protagonist. The fact that it could separate, the endoskeleton could separate from it. Really, really, just really cool special effects. I just really love the way they did that. And I thought the actor that played the Rev 9, Gabriel Luna, was probably the most intimidating since Robert Patrick had played the T-1000 in Terminator 2. I also really loved Mackenzie Davis's Grace, the Protector, in this. I love that it wasn't, just like Schwarzenegger again, protecting the main protagonist in this one. I just thought it was just something refreshing, and I love that you don't know everything about her. The first encounter with the Rev 9, that whole scene, I think is one of the most exciting action set pieces in the entire franchise. And it was also so great to see Linda Hamilton come back as Sarah Connor and be showing just the growth as, you know, the character of where she is now that her son is gone. She's sort of still, you know, the badass that we remember her from Terminator 2. The thing about this film that I'm not crazy about is what they did with the T-800 after it killed John Connor. What happened to it, I don't know why. That was the one story element that I just wasn't crazy about, but it does make sense, I guess, because it is still, you know, in this time. But it was just something that just took away from the mystique of those Terminators. The other thing that I think a lot of people just had problems with was that, you know, hope for the future was the Danny Ramos character, played by Natalia Reyes. And while she's not the best actress I've ever seen, I actually really did like her character, and you do see growth with her character throughout the film. I also love the fact that she wasn't somebody that was going to give birth to the hope for the future. She was the hope for the future. That was also something that I thought was really good. And a lot of people just went after this because saying it was, you know, killing off the male protagonist as opposed to a female protagonist, and that, you know, it was, you know, just this feminist movement that was trying to change the course of action films or whatever you want to. It didn't bother me at all. It was something different, and this is what I was kind of craving with these sequels. I wanted to see something different, and even though this is another attempt to sort of revitalize a franchise that was on life support, I think they really did a good effort here, and I did like the way that the story played out and where it ended up and where it could go in the future. I thought the idea of Legion was scary, just like the idea of Cyberdyne and Skynet was scary. It was just dead on arrival. People hated it. I think they unfairly criticized it, and I fell for it too, because I didn't even see it in the movie theater. I didn't see it till it came out afterwards. So again, that's why sometimes I think there's a lot of toxicity when it comes to movies and perceptions of movies, and especially when they try something a little bit, maybe, you know, doing something a little bit radical, something that you might not appreciate or care about. I mean, there was a lot of critics that really just went after this. Some that were on this YouTube platform, like Chris Stuckman or Jeremy Johns, they hated it too. So again, you know, it's a divisive film. I know Cody Leach really likes it, and he says it's his favorite sequel after Terminator 2. And I have to agree with them, because I think it has the heart, the grit. It's a hardcore film. It's not PG-13 like Genesis was. It's R-rated, and it has that edge to it that some of the other sequels just didn't have, especially, I'm going to say, Salvation and Genesis. I think those two, despite the fact that I do like Salvation, I don't think they had the edge to them that the other films in the franchise did that came before them, or this one that came after them. Linda Hamilton has gone on record saying she would never come back and play this character again. She's done with Sarah Connor. So this is the swan song for her and Schwarzenegger in these roles. So I think people should give it a chance. And while I wasn't really crazy about the way they handled the T-800, I still, you know, they tried something different, and it was funny in spots, but I just didn't. It didn't need to be. And I wish they could have just done something different with that character after it served its mission of killing John Connor at the beginning of the film. So that's my take on it. I think everybody did a great job on it, and I really enjoyed rewatching it this past February, and I can't wait to watch it again. So yeah, so number 3 for me is going to be Terminator Dark Fate. And now my top 2, and I'm sure this is everybody's top 2 that love the Terminator films. Number 2 for me is going to be the second film in the franchise, the one that most people will put as their favorite film in the franchise. And this is pretty much where it's sat for me since it came out in 1991 when I was 17 years old, and my cousin Jason and I went to go see it opening weekend and was blown away by it. I had been following it from, you know, when it was being made, watched like the HBO behind the scenes, got the movie magazine, so I knew kind of, you know, ahead of the game that Schwarzenegger's character was going to be the hero in this one and not the villain. And part of me was upset about that at the time. I really was like, oh no, he's a terrific villain. I would love to see him come back as a villain. But it works, and Robert Patrick is awesome as the T-1000, and yeah, so The Terminator 2 holds a place near and dear to my heart. It was a magical time being a kid and seeing this on the big screen with my cousin, who's unfortunately passed on. I remember that summer very vividly. We were both working for our uncle's auto parts store. That was our summer job, and I remember that night my mom picked us up after work. It was a Friday, and then so we went and saw that movie that weekend, and it was just an absolute blast. But for those who aren't aware of this film, I'll give a little background on the plot. Terminator 2 Judgment Day is a 1991 American science fiction action film directed by James Cameron, who co-wrote the script with William Wisher, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and Robert Patrick. It is the sequel to The Terminator and is the second installment in the Terminator franchise. In the film, the malevolent artificial intelligence Skynet sends the Terminator, a highly advanced killing machine, back in time to 1995 to kill the future leader of the human resistance, John Connor. When he is a child, the resistance sends back a less advanced reprogrammed Terminator to protect Connor and ensure the future of humanity. I said, seeing it opening night with my cousin, I still remember just having a blast going to see it. And it was a magical experience. And it was one that... it's just like it was like the biggest blockbuster ever. It was the most expensive movie at the time. It cost $80 million to make. No movie prior to that had cost that much to make. So that's all you kept seeing was like this was going to be the most expensive blockbuster ever made, and it was a huge, huge film. It was the film for the summer of 1991. This movie is just epic. It takes everything that was established in that first film and just dials it up to 11. And you have, you see John Connor for the first time, played brilliantly by Ed Furlong. You have this new adversary in the T-1000 and the special effects that were used to create the liquid metal. Just so many great things. You have a badass Sarah Connor with Linda Hamilton reprising the role, and now she's a warrior. And it's all about protecting her son, no matter, by any means necessary. You also have the character that Joe Morton plays, Miles Bennett Dyson, who's the one that's actually going to, sort of kick off the events that lead to the end of the world, that lead to Judgment Day. It's a brilliant film, and one thing that they did that you don't realize how successful it is until you go back and think about it. But, just the fact that they were able to humanize the Terminator, whereas in the first film, he was just this killing machine. And the thing about this film that was always so perfect for me, and I think it could have been a perfect cap to the franchise, is that at the end, it seems like they've stopped it. In fact, there is an alternate ending set 40 years after the events of this film that show an older Sarah and John Connor and his child, her granddaughter, in the future in Washington, D.C., where nothing has happened, that Judgment Day never happened. They were able to stop it. And I always thought it was a shame they didn't leave that in there. I think if they would have left that scene in there, they could have still probably made more films, but it was a perfect cap to those first two films that are the most successful of the entire franchise. But again, this movie set the bar for special effects and blockbusters for years to come, for decades to come. It's an amazing film still to this day, and absolutely one of my favorite films by James Cameron, and it will always be my second favorite in the franchise. So number 2 for me is going to be Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And that leaves my number 1, which is there's only one left, and that is the original Terminator from 1984, The Terminator. This film scared the shit out of me. One of the things I've always been scared about is war, and the fact that this film talks about a nuclear war that annihilates humanity pretty much and leads to this resistance against the machines scares me, and still scares me to this day. Now that we talk about AI and things like that, I still think about this film and being 10 years old when it came out, and I was 11 years old when I saw it. If I remember correctly, I saw it in late summer, early fall of 1985. I remember my stepmom, Judy, who I'm not a really big fan of, rented it for me. My dad usually worked on the weekends, and she rented it for me. And I remember she stood in front of the television during the love scene between Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese. And I really wanted to see boobs. I didn't get to see them. And at that point, I had seen so many Friday the 13th movies where there was boobs on display everywhere. And the fact that she made me miss that scene really made me angry. And it's funny when I think about it now, because I was able to watch the Terminator dig his eye out of his head, but I couldn't watch a love scene between two people. So it's just funny the way things are, and I always thought that was funny when I think back to it. But the Terminator changed my life. It's a film that still affects me to this day. I love Kyle Reese. I love Michael Biehn in the film, and I've been a Michael Biehn champion ever since. He's one of my favorite actors. He's just been in some of my favorite films of all time. And for those of people who are not aware of what the plot of The Terminator is a 1984 American science fiction action film directed by James Cameron, written by Cameron, Gale Ann Hurd, and produced by Hurd. It stars Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator, a cybernetic assassin sent back in time from 2029 to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor, played by Linda Hamilton, whose unborn son will one day save mankind from extinction by Skynet, a hostile artificial intelligence in a post-apocalyptic future. Kyle Reese, Michael Biehn, is a soldier sent back in time to protect Sarah. The screenplay is credited to Cameron, Hurd, while co-written. William Wisher Jr. received an additional dialogue credit. So, Arnold Schwarzenegger is terrifying as the Terminator for me. I love just sort of the whole build-up to him finally tracking to Tech Noir, the club, and just that Kyle's there and she thinks Kyle's the one that's after her, and then just the way that he picks her out, and he has that one guy with the laser scope, and it puts the little red dot on her head, and then Kyle just unloads on him. That whole interaction, and then him saying, "Come with me if you want to live," to Sarah, and the chase beginning, and it's just sort of this cat and mouse game through the rest of the film until they eventually defeat him at the end. And then the romance between Kyle and Sarah, and that Kyle is John Connor's father, and there's just so many great things about this film, and how you see, Linda Hamilton go from playing Sarah as this meek, quiet, shy waitress to the mother of the leader of the resistance, and how she just sort of has to become this warrior at the end to take on this Terminator that will not stop coming after her. And it's just a brilliant film. And I know a lot of people put Terminator 2 over this one, but first, I guess it could just be the time that I saw it, the age that I was, the fact that I would see it 6 years before Terminator 2 came out. So for many people, I'm sure Terminator 2 was probably the first one they saw. And the fact that Terminator 2 was so much bigger than the original Terminator, sometimes that, changes people. That's sometimes more enticing for something that's a little more slow moving. But the original Terminator for me is much like a slasher film. And I think that's why I love it so much. And I still put it as one of my favorite films of all time. It still scares me. The humor is there, but it's not so overt as we would see in some of the other sequels like Genesis. There's funny moments, but they're not overtly funny. And I just feel like it's a scary movie. It's an exciting movie. And when it ends, it just sort of, you're going, holy shit, what's going to happen? Could they possibly stop this from happening? Could they possibly stop Judgment Day? And that's why, the second film was so, everybody was waiting for it. It was a sequel that we needed. And I think, for me personally, as much as I enjoy some of the sequels like Dark Fate and Rise of the Machines, I feel like the first two Terminator films are the perfect story. And you could have ended it with the second film, and that could have been the way it capped. It was perfect, in my opinion. But that being said, number one for me in the Terminator franchise will always be 1984's original, The Terminator. So that's going to be it, my Philippines. Like I said, just something kind of fun I thought I would do for Memorial Day weekend, a holiday weekend, weekend that for me was always the start of the summer movie season. So we would get, really good action films. And, as a kid growing up, this was like, I remember, just seeing films like Total Recall around this time, and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Back to the Future 3, and things like that. I mean, good times, good memories. And I miss those days. I miss the simplicity of those days. And I just thought this would be a perfect, sort of kickoff to the summer movie season. Hopefully we have some really good blockbusters coming this summer. I know there's not as many because of the writer's strike last year, but a lot of the stuff that's coming out I'm really excited about. Bad Boys Ride or Die. We got the new Beverly Hills Cop, which unfortunately is just going to be on Netflix. I wish it was going to be in theaters because just from the trailers and everything I've seen, I'm really excited about that one. That's probably the one I'm most excited about because I'm a huge fan of that franchise. It's been 30 years since the last Beverly Hills Cop. We got that. We got Deadpool and Wolverine. We got Quiet Place Day 1. We got Maxine coming out. There's a lot of great stuff coming out that I'm really excited about. Yeah, I still really hold fond memories to these summers of old and the times that some of these Terminator films would drop and seeing them with the people that I did. Yeah, good times and good memories, and I will leave you guys with that. Let me know down in the comment section below what your favorite Terminator film is in the franchise. I'm sure it's going to be Terminator 2 or Terminator, the original. If they, let me know. But if it's one of the other ones, let me know which one's your favorite. I really love to hear other people's opinions on the franchise. And I hope everyone has a safe holiday weekend, and I will talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always. Peace. Hey, my fellow Fright Fiends, I just want to thank everyone for supporting BoogeyMan Ben's Horror Zone. If you haven't yet subscribed and you'd like to, please hit the subscribe button down below. Click the bell notification so you're updated every time I drop a new video. I try to drop a video at least once or twice a week. The Horror Zone is a passion of mine, and it really makes me happy that I can share that passion with all of you guys. Thanks so much again for the support, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always.